Tonight, I want to share with you three different stories. They're each going to be in their own clip, but they're three different stories of progressions that we've seen in the lives of young people. We could share the stories of parents and families. We could share some of the successes at the community level for some projects that we've pulled off. But these are individual stories, as we like to focus in on the power and the impact of relationships. And we see that everything we do is a way to create an intersection to build those relationships and walk life out together. The first story is a young man that has been with us for going on 7 years, 8 years now. In fact, we've had a relationship with him longer than that, but initially he was a Heaven Trained kid, and all three of these stories, they were Heaven Trained kids at one point. But about 8 years ago, we had 8 students that were killed in about a 6 month window, and each of those kids were killed by other children and young people. And two of them were in the same field, right where we park our bus, what back then was our last service of the day. And it became really apparent that with all the things that we were doing, that we were not having the impact. The neighborhood was not reflecting what God's kingdom coming and His will being done would look like in our community. So we had to look hard at what we were doing. We had for years been an organization that focused on reaching thousands of children and reaching thousands of households, and we would do very efficient effort. We would find solutions oftentimes that could meet large quantity needs with very small budgets, and we worked with neighbors to pull these things off, and so they're very sustainable. But they were, when you work from an efficiency model, you're not building deep relationships, so you're moving on and you don't have time to really get connected. And so about 8 years ago, we began to make this fundamental shift that instead of trying to reach dozens of neighborhoods, we're going to focus on one. And instead of trying to grow our numbers to be, from 1,200 to 1,500, we wanted to focus in on 15 kids. And instead of just showing up a couple days a week, we wanted to have a presence in the community that was touching the lives of young people every day of the week. And we noticed that there was a certain age that Heaven Trained kids began to move on, and it was no longer cool to go to Heaven Trained. And they kind of grew out of it, and we began to realize that we didn't have anything for those young people. And so we became very intentional about starting intersecting points, things that we could do that would draw those relationships in and begin to listen, to learn, and to grow to know some young people and begin to try to reverse that trend. About that time, we had a couple interns that had been working with us for several years. There were 3 brothers, and we had come to learn that the interns that we worked with seemed to have the biggest impact both on who we were doing or what we were doing and how they grew. And we saw very clearly that the deepest impact in any life were the young people that were the closest to our team or had become team members. And so there was a young man a few years ago. He had been a Heaven Trained kid for several years, and he asked if he could volunteer and hang out with some of the other kids. And he came around a little bit and was more into having fun and playing games, but he's a nice guy, so we let him stay around. And over the course of the last 6 or 7 years, he went through high school, and he's graduated now, and he's still continuing to come. He's been faithful. He shows up almost every Saturday. He's willing and able to work with anything that we have going on. He's recently started volunteering in our office just to learn new skills and to find new ways to strengthen what we do. And he's been a great advocate and a great young person leader. Um, but it's not been an easy journey. We've watched as he walked 2 miles through very dangerous neighborhoods to school. During his senior year, he was held up several times at gunpoint where people were trying to rob him for his lunch money. And one day he only had a bus ticket. And, that was a rough experience. He recalls, now he's embarrassed by this, but in order to survive, there were times that he would have to go to the store and steal. And not just because he needed to survive, because he was instructed at home that he had to. And so he had to go steal dish soap or food or household items. And it was required that he do that. And so he really learned at an early age some very, very definite survival skills.